You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself.
Do you want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No, I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of inmates. What I am doing is protecting this country, providing historic reform, and combating the weaponization of intelligence by the likes of you. And we have countlessly proven you to be a liar in Russiagate, in January 6th.
Kash Patel is guilty. He is totally part of the cover-up now. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. I don't care where his eyes are pointing. He is there pointing to the fact that he is not prosecuting the guilty, period. And he will never recover from that.
Despite taking 33 hours to apprehend the suspect in the tragic killing of Charlie Kirk and falsely claiming that they had the right guy in custody the very first night of the shooting, FBI Director Kash Patel was really quick to rush out and brag about how quickly he and his team had worked during the press conference that happened earlier today. Take a look.
The arrest is a testament to the dedication of good law enforcement being great and partnerships in law enforcement, which I've tried to highlight as my tenure as the director of the FBI. There is no better relationship for law enforcement than the FBI to partner with state and local authorities, and you've seen it here in these last few days. I want to express my deep gratitude to the employees of the FBI, the men and women, the evidence response team tacticians, the special operators, the agents, the support staff. You have done monumental work in historic time when the public, who had a right to demand such an expeditious solving of an investigation, the FBI answered that call diligently, critically important to our nation, and we delivered. And I'm proud to be their leader, and I'm proud to be the director of the FBI.
I don't know what that strange little man is saying. Yeah, they answered the call. The call was from the family member of the shooter, because if not for that, there would be nothing. We would still be looking for him. And by the way, I'm not gonna be critical of the investigators or the agents or the cops that are working with them. They're scrubbing the internet. They're out there, they're searching, they're investigating people. They're doing all that stuff that Kash Patel is not doing any of, by the way. Kash Patel is just sitting stewing after having made one boneheaded blunder after the other. And feeling the pressure, by the way, because more and more people in the MAGA world were mad at him. It's all well and good for loyalists and toadies with no experience to be put into these incredibly important and sensitive positions in government when you don't care if the government functions. But as soon as you desperately want it to function because one of your own was struck down, suddenly it's like, oh wait, why do we have an idiot in one of these positions? And unfortunately, he's the idiot. So when he comes out and says we got him, okay, I'll say the same thing. We got him, and I can say that because I had as much to do with it as Kash Patel did. Neither of us were essential. Both of us could have taken a vacation and it would have been the exact same outcome. And so anyway, for him to come out and pretend that his leadership was a part of this, the only way it couldn't have been, like, if what would he have told people not to answer the phone? I guess that would have been bad leadership. Other than that, I don't think he was that important in this particular story. But anyway, before we get into the discussion, I want to give some evidence, some examples of that pressure that I referenced he was experiencing. Here is Steve Bannon and some other conservatives.
So many unanswered questions, and I do not understand why law enforcement did not step up to the microphone and give some details. Instead of glazing each other about this partnership and we're all great, we did a great job. Correct me if I'm wrong. It appears the kid had said something to the family had just confronted him, and the family turned him in. I'm not seeing the great law enforcement work, and I'm not, saying there's not great law enforcement. They all came together. I got that, but this was not through law enforcement work. I don't know why Kash flew out there, thousands of miles to give us, hey, working partnerships and our great partnership in Utah. Okay, I got that. No offense to the law enforcement guys in the future of this. The public assumes that you're working together as partnerships.
Exactly. Now, Kash may not know that because, again, he doesn't know what he's doing and he's not qualified for the position. So all of this might be another blessed discovery every day that he wakes up. But anyway, look, this is what you get when you put a guy like him who's only in that position because he's a loyalist. He wrote a fawning picture book about Donald Trump, and his main assistant is a bloviating podcaster. And I understand like they could have done a lot in this investigation. They're certainly not distracted by like, finding justice with the Epstein files or anything like that. They had the time on their hands. But anyway, I think if anything coming out of this, he should be fired, replaced by somebody who actually knows what they're doing. But Jordan, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, Kash Patel has no business running the FBI. It's an absolute joke. And I was laughing, just the mental image of Patel and Dan Bongino flying out to Utah to do conduct or lead the investigation. Like, what would they be doing? Just podcasting from the forest? This is another problem. We're seeing this throughout the government. This is what it looks like when you fill these positions with lackeys and loyalists instead of somebody who has expertise in that field. This person was free to roam for an additional day because they wrongfully detained 2 other people, and granted it was a chaotic situation, but still, like Mark pointed out, like many people have pointed out, the only reason they have him is because somebody turned him in. The press conference last night was not very reassuring. They said they had no leads and they were begging the public for help. The FBI didn't solve this crime. That's it. The public did, and it was somebody who seemed like they wanted the reward, who already knew him.
Mark, any other thoughts? I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, but
yeah, but this crew really can't wait to take a victory lap, and that's kind of why Bongino and Patel go out there and they sort of just to try to, in some way, take credit for an investigation they had nothing to do with. We said, I mean, it was like working the phones at a telethon. I mean, you essentially sit there, you take leads from the public, and the one that seems as though it's connected, and this one was, served up cleanly. It wasn't it wasn't like solving the case in New York where the CEO is shot on the street and you have to put together a jigsaw puzzle of little bits and fragments of information. This was a situation in which the family reached out. Bannon was right, and Bannon says some loathsome things later on in that same run. But he's absolutely right about the fact that essentially Bongino and Patel, they go out there and they're just there to sort of be part of the winner's circle. It is what's happening across government, and it stands as a stark example of what these toadies do as they sit there completely vapid and unable to really do any kind of police work, and they simply take credit and celebrate, if you will, something that they had nothing to do with.
Exactly, and I can only imagine. And I can't speak for any of them, but so many of those actual agents, the ones who haven't been fired for being the wrong race or whatever, how insulting must it be to see these losers standing up there and taking credit for this when you're the ones doing the actual work? It's how the diplomats must feel when they see Donald Trump talking about how he should get the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a very weird administration. It's 80% people who have no business being in their position, the Kristi Noems and the Pete Hegseth and all that. And then you have the 20% who theoretically do know what they're doing, but have to pretend that they don't. Like Besant and Lutnick understand the economy, but they all have to now pretend that they don't know how tariffs work because Donald Trump is a moron. It's a very weird way to run a government.
But the one thing they do, John, is they all sing from the same hymnal, and you saw it in that press conference that we just saw a bit of from Patel, and that is they lavish praise on the supreme leader, on Donald Trump. It's remarkable to see, but that's the one thing Patel can do. He can do it 24 hours a day, is find new ways to compliment Donald Trump on his squiring of this investigation, on his appointment of great law enforcement people. It's all about lavishing praise on the supreme leader.
It can't be stated enough. Patel has to be fired, and I think it should be as soon as possible. I mean, thankfully, this was a contained situation. There's only one person who lost their life, but think about if it was a mass shooting and somebody was on the loose. Think about someone who escapes and goes to a different town. You need to think about the long-term consequences of keeping him in this position. I don't expect Trump will, because like Mark just laid out, he's doing the most valuable thing you can do to keep that job, which is just praise Trump.
Exactly, yeah, he should be fired. Take Dan Bongino with him, let him spend more time with the podcast he loves so much. Imagine if this guy had been the Minnesota guy and it had a list of 60 people that he wanted to take out. Thank God he appeared to only wanted to take out one person. The days that they gave him to run amok if he wanted to could have proved deadly, but thank God it didn't happen.
If I had a dispute with DoorDash and Kash Patel was investigating it, would I get the credit? I imagine I would not. I imagine if there was a discrepancy on a DoorDash order, the head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Kash Patel, would not be able to secure my credit of $11.90.
Well, comedian Tim Dillon isn't the only one taking some punches at Kash Patel, the FBI director, of course, and his handling of the investigation following the murder of Charlie Kirk. In fact, there's a new Fox News exclusive which alleges that, well, there are very high-level members of the Trump administration who are not pleased with Patel. They spoke to 10 sources across multiple federal offices who all said that Patel is under fire over his handling of Charlie Kirk's murder investigation. So one of these anonymous sources with knowledge of ongoing personnel discussions stated that the White House, Attorney General Pam Bondi, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche have no confidence in Kash. Pam in particular cannot stand him, Blanche either. Now, let's just remember that Pam Bondi kind of hates Kash Patel because of a problem that she created herself by promising the release of the Epstein files, pretending like she had the goods, or maybe she does have the goods, but then never delivering. And apparently behind the scenes, she had a bit of a scuffle with Kash Patel over that issue. So she has, in my opinion, other motivations or other motivating factors. So just keep that in mind. But we also have to be completely fair and honest here. Kash Patel did appear to bungle the investigation in the initial phases, and we'll get to the details on that in just a minute. Now, while Trump has been defending Kash Patel publicly, according to this report, privately, it's a different story. Multiple sources close to Trump acknowledged the president was not thrilled with some past episodes of Patel's performance, including a public feud with AG Bondi over the administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case, which is fascinating because, again, I mean, look, Trump doesn't want the Epstein files to be released. I think that's abundantly clear at this point. Pam Bondi is a huge part of why Trump's base was expecting the Epstein files to be released. So the fact that he's taking Bondi's side over Patel's is really interesting here. Now, Patel has also been widely criticized for his response to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, of course. So he stated that law enforcement had Kirk's killer in custody on the day of the assassination. We can all remember that if we were following the story closely. But it turns out that law enforcement did not have the killer in custody. They had someone that they were questioning, but it was the wrong person. He was later released. And Patel had to essentially backtrack his statement on X and admit that the search for the killer was ongoing. And so an anonymous federal official remarked to Fox News, it was total amateur hour. But Patel did attempt to defend himself during an interview on Fox News this morning. Let's take a look.
When we were still looking for the guy, I know you posted that we got him. And that ended up not being true. You took some incoming because of that. What led to you posting that? Why did you feel so certain about it? And what do you have to say about the criticism?
No, I appreciate this opportunity. Look, as I stated, I was being transparent with working with the public on our findings as I had them. I stated in that message that we had a subject and that we were going to interview him, and we did, and he was released. The job of the FBI is not just to manhunt the actual suspect who did the killing or suspects, but it's also to eliminate targets and eliminate subjects who are not involved in the process, and that's what we were doing. Could I have worded it a little better in the heat of the moment? Sure. But do I regret putting it out? Absolutely not.
Okay, but you made it appear as though the suspect was in custody and later had to retract that statement essentially. And a few final things that I'll mention here that are worth knowing about. So Patel also traveled to Utah, if you guys can remember, a few days ago to basically be part of this press conference that provided updates on the, assassin. But Patel never spoke at the press conference. It was very awkward, very strange. And now we know what was going on behind the scenes. The back-to-back communications fumbles sparked fury from AG Bondi, Deputy AG Blanche, and the White House, multiple sources told Fox. Multiple sources also told Fox that Patel was forcibly instructed not to speak, adding that investigators had still not identified a suspect when the briefing was delayed. Cenk.
Yeah, oh boy. Kash Patel has a number of issues, and I can't tell which one is the real problem for him. I know what I think is the real problem, but I'm not sure what Trump thinks is the real problem, which leads first to an amusing comment from one of our members on TYT.com. Art Guy wrote in, I'm pretty positive Trump will fire Patel, not for incompetence, but for looking bad on TV.
Totally.
Okay, so I'll leave that one right there. Okay, so now to the main issues. One is general incompetence, and that seems like an open and shut case. I mean, look guys, that incident that Anna's describing to you is so embarrassing for the director of the FBI. When real law enforcement has to tell him, listen, clown boy, shut up, okay? You don't know what you're doing, you're gonna ruin the investigation, so hush up. Now, that's the head of the FBI. Normally the head of the FBI tells others that. But since he also knows he's a clown, he's like, oh, okay. And he proved it by, no, we got him. And apparently he was at some fancy restaurant when he got the news. I don't care that he's at a fancy restaurant, he can eat at any restaurant he likes. But brother, take a minute to go figure out what's going on in a situation that is dire before you go blurting things out on Twitter. But that's the problem, he doesn't come from the law enforcement world. He comes from the Twitter world. So he's like, I got this, X, I got him. When you don't even know anything. No real law enforcement person would do that without checking who is it that we got, how sure are we, and confirming that with like 8 different people down the chain. And obviously he didn't do that. So incompetence is a real issue. But internal politics is also a real issue. And I have no idea where Kash Patel comes out on that stuff. And Dan Bongino is another interesting cat. And he keeps saying, things that make you wonder what he means. About this, he kept talking about, well, there could be larger things afoot, and I can't tell you, but we're looking into it. What does that mean? I don't know what that means, right? And I don't think that that's the thing that the deputy director of the FBI should be saying either. I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors, and Medicare's chock full of them. Between commission-hungry brokers and thousands of confusing plan options, most seniors aren't on the best plan for them. That's why I partner with Chapter. They're fully independent and they work for you, not the insurance companies. That's really important. They can review all your options in under 20 minutes, and the average senior they help saves over $1,100 a year. And the best part of it is, it doesn't cost you a thing. So if you're turning 65, call the number on the screen to connect with a Chapter advisor today. By the way, once they leave office, I would be shocked if they didn't tell us some of what happened behind the scenes, some of it true, and God knows what they add on top of that, right? But this is what Trump signed up for. He wanted a clown show. He hired a bunch of jugglers, and now when they, drop all the balls because they weren't very good jugglers to begin with, people are disappointed in the circus. But you voted for this circus. And in the beginning, people were very excited about Kash Patel and Dan Bongino on the right. Even on the right now, not as excited.
Well, there's another juggler in the pipeline. And so if Kash Patel gets the pink slip, if it's over for him in the FBI, first of all, let me just note, it's unlikely that they'll get rid of him entirely. He'll probably just be demoted. But a gentleman by the name of Andrew Bailey is apparently up for consideration. That's the FBI's current co-deputy director alongside Dan Bongino. Allies of President Trump and Patel's harshest critics have begun to circulate word that contingency plans for Patel's ouster are forming. They also claim his hopeful successor, Andrew Bailey, made clear that he would not leave his post as Missouri's AG or abandon his aspirations to run for state governor, only to serve as Patel's number 2. But once Bailey has served at the FBI for at least 90 days, things could change. He would in fact be eligible to fill the FBI director position should it become vacant. And Fox News's sources stated that if Patel were removed, again, he would probably just be demoted, not kicked out of the administration entirely. But keep in mind that the sources speaking to Kash Patel have their own agenda. And I noticed that in this little excerpt from Fox News's reporting. A senior official involved in decision-making at the White House dismissed the allegations as baseless and even wishful thinking from figures who might benefit. This is politics, baby. Once someone in the administration or someone in Trump's orbit smells blood in the water, they're gonna, position themselves for, FBI director. They're going to maneuver in a way that's going to help them accumulate power or get a powerful position. So we'll wait and see what happens. But I am seeing widespread condemnation toward Kash Patel and his handling of, the investigation into the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, there's the only reason why I'm hesitating, guys. Well, there's two reasons. One is that who's going to replace him? Do you think it's going to be someone better? I'm not at all convinced of that, right? But the second reason is because I don't know where he comes out on Israeli politics. So, and Epstein files. So keep it real. We know where Pam Bondi comes out. Pam Bondi's on the side of never release the Epstein files. Whatever Israel wants, Israel gets, right? Marco Rubio's on that side. Many people in the administration are on that side. I don't really know where Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are on that. Of course they said, oh, we want the Epstein files released. They get into government, they go, oh my God, there are no Epstein files. So they look ridiculous, right? But they have significant problems with Pam Bondi. And if you have significant problems with Pam Bondi, you might accidentally be right about a thing or two, right? So if all we're going to get is more Pam Bondi allies, then, okay, we got Kash, we caught him outside, but then what replaces him might be even worse.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
That was our FBI director, Kash Patel, treating us all as if we're idiots, totally stupid, and unaware of the fact that Epstein absolutely did traffic young girls to other powerful individuals. We know that through testimony. We know that because, the victim speaking out about it. So we'll get to all those details, including this huge spat that Patel had with Senator Adam Schiff, a Democrat. But before we get to that, let me give you some more details about this exchange and what's going on. So today, during a 4.5-hour hearing in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Kash Patel alleged that there's no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked his victims to other men. Now, after the exchange you just watched, Senator John Kennedy urged Patel to release as much information as he possibly could because, as he put it, this issue is not gonna go away. Patel agreed, but then blamed someone else for the lack of documentation that we've received. He blamed US Attorney Alex Acosta's original investigation into and agreement with Epstein for the limited amount of information in the current Epstein files. Let's take a look at him making that argument.
What exists in the Epstein case files was a direct result of the limited search warrants from 2006 and 2007, which hamstrung future investigations because of the non-prosecution agreement. And multiple administrations had the opportunity to look at the entirety of that case file and recommend prosecutions against anyone that was trafficked under Mr. Epstein and anyone that participated in that trafficking. And the only person to bring charges was the prior administration against Mr. Epstein. Now, I am not saying that others were not trafficked and others were not involved. What I am telling you is that based on the information we have released all credible information, and the information that the Department of Justice and the FBI never releases is information on investigations that are not credible. And I know that's not gonna satisfy many people, but if they wanted it done right, then the investigation from its origination should have been done right, and he should not have been given a get out of jail free card to do jail on the weekends for 12 hours a day, and he should have been investigated fully for the entirety of his crime and criminal enterprise, not just from 1997 to 2001.
But again, as Senator Kennedy mentioned, we do absolutely have the testimony of multiple Epstein victims who claimed that they were in fact trafficked to other men. So, and by the way, let me just pause for a second. Wasn't the result of Alex Acosta's prosecution into Jeffrey Epstein, the one charge that Jeffrey Epstein was found guilty of, was trafficking women? It was a prostitution charge, right?
Yeah, so it was soliciting prostitution. So you could argue that that's not necessarily trafficking.
Got it, okay.
Okay, and of course, they weren't prostitutes. They were underage girls.
Yes.
But yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm not calling them, sex workers or anything like that. Obviously, if you're underage, you cannot consent to that. That's rape. Now, in one court filing, an accuser identified as Jane Doe, number 3, alleges that she was trafficked by Epstein for sexual purposes to many other powerful men, including numerous prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well-known prime minister, and other world leaders. Now, it is believed that Jane Doe number 3 is Virginia Giuffre, who died earlier this year. Now, she said in a deposition that at different times she was directed to have sex with Britain's Prince Andrew, another prince, the unnamed owner of a large hotel chain, and Glenn Dubin, a billionaire hedge fund manager, according to a transcript. And in addition to that, in a separate sworn deposition or depositions, alleged victim Sarah Ransom said Epstein was transparent about trafficking girls to visitors who came to his home in New York City and his private island in the Virgin Islands. So she said, and I'm gonna quote her, there were various buildings around the island, like little shelter things, where him and his guests used to have sex with the girls, like beds set up for instant sexual entertainment. At his townhouse in New York, I was also lent out by him to his friends and associates to have sex. So we'll get back to the hearing and more of what Kash Patel has to say, but I'm curious what you think about the arguments that Patel made to Senator Kennedy.
They sound Israeli, and here's what I mean by that. Not that Epstein is related to Israel, that's a separate question, right? I mean, they sound so absurd in their denial that it sounds like the Israeli government. No one has been hurt in Gaza. What? We see the whole thing, right? So no one has been trafficked. What do you mean? There's over 1,000 girls who've been trafficked.
So he doesn't say that exactly, right? Like I want to be fair.
I'm getting to that.
Okay,
I'm getting to
go
that.
ahead.
So in the beginning, he says we have no credible evidence of anyone who's been trafficked. I'm like, what? What are you saying? That's so demonstrably false, right? So then, if you notice, he changes it to, I'm not saying others were not trafficked. Well, I thought that is what you said in the earlier clip. Okay, now you're clarifying, yeah, they were trafficked, but they were trafficked by ghosts, by no one. So he says, no. It's just that we don't have good enough evidence anymore that we could charge anyone because of how badly it was bungled before. Okay, so, and he was giving such a light sentence and it was an outrage, etc. Okay, so did you investigate that? Why was he given such a light sentence? Because it's absurd, right? Why was the guy who gave him the light sentence, why did he say that he was told to do that by intelligence agencies? Why was he then appointed labor secretary under Donald Trump after doing one of the most egregious acts of non-prosecution in American history? Why was he rewarded for that act, seemingly by President Trump, who you work for now? So if his bottom line is, we're definitely not going to prosecute anyone. He almost referred to the perpetrators as the victims. He was like, well, there are people who we don't want to put out unfair charges.
Right.
How about you put out fair charges?
Right.
And guys, who are we kidding? There was video cameras in every room. So every denial is 100% absurd, not 99%. They're on tape. If you wanted to prosecute them, you could prosecute them. You're choosing not to. They're on tape.
But Cenk, the previous administrations didn't prosecute them.
Okay, but think about that. I know that's
free to go.
Yeah, so that's exactly the other thing I wrote down, Anna, in my notes.
I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors, and Medicare's chock full of them. Between commission-hungry brokers and thousands of confusing plan options, most seniors aren't on the best plan for them. That's why I partner with Chapter. They're fully independent and they work for you, not the insurance companies. That's really important. They can review all your options in under 20 minutes, and the average senior they help saves over $1,100 a year. And the best part of it is, it doesn't cost you a thing. Call 301-969-2545 to connect with a Chapter advisor today.
Which is, so wait, you're telling me all of the administrations are in cahoots on making sure that Epstein's clients are not prosecuted, and that's a defense? How is that a defense? You're saying, oh yeah, I'm being just like all the other administrations, just like our beloved Biden, our beloved Obama, and Trump won. And we all are crooks and are choosing not to prosecute presumably hundreds of guys who raped American girls. Well, then you're gonna have to explain to us why you're choosing to do that.
That's right.
And he's not. All he's doing is whataboutism. What about Biden? What about Acosta? What about this? Oh yeah, we're not gonna prosecute anyone. Okay, that's what I thought. You're guilty. You're totally, Kash Patel is guilty. He is totally part of the cover up now. There is no ands, ifs, or buts. I don't care where his eyes are pointing. He is there pointing to the fact that he is not prosecuting the guilty, period. And he will never recover from that.
So let's get back to the hearing, because soon after that exchange with Senator Kennedy, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff weighs in and quoted what Patel told Kennedy back to him and hammered him about exactly what he meant. Let's take a look.
Is it your testimony today that in all the Epstein files, that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked no one to anyone but himself? Is that your testimony, Mr.
I never
Patel?
said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic anyone else.
Did he traffic any young woman to someone other than himself? That was Mr. Kennedy's question, Senator Kennedy's question.
The information that 3 administrations have had access to have made determinations that there are no investigative leads that were credible to prosecute and investigate any others.
There are victims like Virginia Giuffre who have testified otherwise, who have said otherwise. And you're telling the American people today that the Epstein list is a single name and it's Jeffrey Epstein. That's what we're to believe?
That's not what I'm saying. That's what you're saying.
Okay, so after that, Schiff asked Patel about the mysterious transfer of Epstein's co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, to a minimum security prison camp after she had her interview with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Patel claimed that the decision was entirely made by the Bureau of Prisons. And that's when things really started to go haywire. Take a look.
The Bureau of Prisons decided on their own, without any consultation with Blanche or anyone else, that they were gonna suddenly, after this interview, completely unrelated to this interview, completely unrelated to anything she said, move her to a prison not suitable for a sex offender. You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No. I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of inmates. What I am doing is protecting this country, providing historic reform, and combating the weaponization of intelligence by the likes of you. And we have countlessly proven you to be a liar in Russiagate, in January 6th. You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised that you continue to lie from your perch and put on a show so you can go raise money for your charade. You are a political buffoon at best.
Good boy, Kash, good boy. Trump is very proud of you. Okay, maybe he'll keep you as FBI director. There's whispers, rumors about how you might be pushed out because of how poorly you handled the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder. But that was amazing. That was incredible. I mean, the way that he is totally downplaying the lack of justice, considering the reality that there were other co-conspirators, other men involved, is amazing when you compare what he's saying right there to what he was saying prior to entering the administration. Because prior to entering the administration, if you guys can remember, Kash Patel was a big hero for the American people. He was gonna fight like hell to get the Epstein files released. But something happened following Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to the United States, his meeting with Donald Trump. Donald Trump changed entirely, especially when it comes to his stance on carrying out anything and everything Israel wants to do. He would push back a little bit before, now he doesn't push back at all. And any notion of the Epstein files getting released, I mean, you can't even have a conversation about that with members of the Trump administration. He doesn't even care about those supporters. He doesn't want their support.
Yeah.
What is Trump hiding?
Yeah, well, he's definitely hiding something. I genuinely don't know if he was a client or not, but what are they hiding is the most important question.
Right.
Because it's not a question whether they're hiding something. I mean, this is all like 1984 level propaganda. I mean, George Orwell was genius of geniuses. So we're supposed to ignore our lying eyes? They have it on video. There were over 1,000 girls who were raped and sexually molested. There's potentially hundreds of guys. They're super powerful, princes and giant Wall Street bankers, some politicians, the former prime minister of Israel. The list goes on. And they're telling us, nope, because of previous administrations, our eyes don't work. Come on. Okay, previous administrations bungled this, and that's why when I watch the video and it's super clear who's on it, and it's super clear who did the raping, instantly my ears stopped working too because of Biden and because of Adam Schiff. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of Adam Schiff, but what's with the bag of squirrels, right? So why did you move Ghislaine Maxwell? You're a buffoon, I'm not gonna let you talk. Okay, so this is now turned into a Piers Morgan show. And Kash Patel just talking over Adam Schiff because it got uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So wait, did you catch it though right before he started screaming? He said, I can't be in the weeds on all these decisions on moving Ghislaine Maxwell. That's in the weeds?
There's a disgusting pedophile groomer that's now in a low security prison that's much more luxurious, so she can be much more comfortable. And that happened immediately after she cleared the president's name as, not being a client, not being in the Epstein files at all. Fascinating, really interesting.
She's probably the most notorious child sex trafficker in American history, along with Epstein. She's certainly the biggest groomer in American history. And you moved her to the lowest security prison, one that's considered a country club, that's what they call it. And by the way, moving anyone convicted of child sex trafficking to a minimum security prison requires overrides. It's not a thing you could do without asking your superiors. It's not a thing, Sally filled out the wrong paperwork. We took the biggest groomer in American history and accidentally moved her to a country club. And no one above us knows. No, brother, all of this is patently absurd. And the good news, guys, and I'm elated to say this. Look, it's not uniform, it's not 100%. But the country's starting to get united on this issue, Epstein files. Maybe we can build off of it, maybe we can't build off of it. But the right wing is absolutely vicious to Kash Patel now. And he was one of them, he liked it. So do I see some MAGA guys still going, oh no, I bet there are no clients at all. I believe everything Donald Trump and Kash Patel say. Yeah, but honestly, not that many. So the right wing's at least as mad as the left wing is at Kash Patel and these obvious lies. And mainly what he's doing in terms of politics now is he's saying to the world, I think MAGA's super stupid. And I could tell him anything. I just couldn't find any clients. It was all Biden's fault, even though I'm in charge. Ghislaine Maxwell got moved. I didn't even know. That's so in the weeds. And he thinks MAGA's gonna go, Kash said it, so it must be true. We are now dogs of Kash Patel. Good luck with that strategy. It's not working, and I don't think it's ever gonna work. So no question, Kash Patel is guilty. And of course, the guy ordering it is Donald Trump.
These documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to. Victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre. May she rest in peace.
Yeah, you just heard that. That was Congressman Thomas Massie grilling FBI Director Kash Patel on the second day of the hearing, where he's essentially testifying and answering questions before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Actually, no, that was Congressman Thomas Massie, so this is not the Senate Judiciary Committee. I guess now he's testifying before members of the House. And I'm glad he's doing that because Thomas Massie came prepared. He had a line of questioning that I found worthy of highlighting. And then more importantly, I think that Massie managed to catch Kash Patel in multiple inconsistencies. So we're gonna show you that, but you just saw him name names. He just named someone who, according to the documents, and allegedly according to Thomas Massie, was one of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. So that's pretty amazing. He's been willing to name names. He said, if the Epstein files are never released, the victims of Epstein's are willing to share the names with him, and he will basically make those names public. But I want you to hear more of what Thomas Massie had to say in his, in the lead up to his question to FBI Director Kash Patel. Take a look at this.
I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007, and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to.
Okay, so we're gonna get to Jess Staley in just a moment. We're gonna talk about who he is and what his relationship was with Jeffrey Epstein. Because naming names is a big deal, and Thomas Massie, now on the second occasion, has been willing to do that. Before we get to that, though, we got to give Massie credit for calling Kash Patel out for the lie that he told when he was testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee just yesterday. He essentially claimed, there's nothing we can do at this point. The investigation is over. He made it seem as though, as FBI director at this point, he's hamstrung. There's nothing he can do. You can't open investigations into Jeffrey Epstein's clients. But obviously, Thomas Massie just proved that is not the case. So what's going on here? Why are you refusing to not only release the Epstein files, which I think the American people should obviously have access to? There should be transparency by our government. But more importantly, if you know that there are Epstein clients and these 302 documents list them, why aren't you opening investigations into these clients who victimized minors? So I thought that was a telling moment, to say the least. Now let's talk a little bit about Jess Staley, who's one of the 20 people that Thomas Massie is referring to from these 302 documents. So basically, the 302 documents, for those who don't know, are basically like the testimony that the victim shared through the investigation. It's a summary of all of that info, right? So he has those 302 documents. And so who is Jess Staley? Well, he did have a long-running relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. In 1999, Staley was the chief executive for JP Morgan's private bank. And he was also part of a team that managed money and investments for Jeffrey Epstein, with whom he quickly developed what is referred to as a fairly close personal relationship. And it was a close relationship. He went to the Jeffrey Epstein Island, vacationed with him, alleged that he went on family vacations. I don't know if I believe that, but here's what else we know. Staley was soon holidaying on Epstein's private island, flying on his private plane, and gaining access to an impressive portfolio of ministers, entrepreneurs, and royalty. The relationship ended up bolstering Staley's profile on Wall Street and even connecting his daughter to senior figures at Ivy League universities. So you kind of get a sense of how things work for the insiders, right? Now, that relationship, though, also eventually ended up destroying Staley's career. Why is that? Well, in July of 2019, Epstein was arrested on child sex trafficking charges, accused of sexually exploiting and abusing dozens of girls at homes in Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida. Some victims were as young as 14, US prosecutors alleged. So that drew attention to Epstein's friends, including Staley. By the time that this happened, right, by the time the 2019 arrest of Epstein occurred, at that point, Staley is the chief executive over at Barclays. He had moved on. And so Barclays told the Financial Conduct Authority in October of 2019 that the pair did not have a close relationship and were last in contact well before Staley took over as chief executive 4 years earlier. That was not true. That was a lie, a total lie. A subsequent FCA investigation involving 102,000 emails from JP Morgan convinced the regulator it had been misled. It alleged that the pair were indeed close friends and stayed in touch via Staley's daughter for years after he joined Barclays. Now, keep in mind, I mean, this was the second time Jeffrey Epstein had been arrested. The first time was in 2006. So homeboy is still gallivanting around town, having a close personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein after he was arrested for the first time. So he did stay in touch with Epstein after he was arrested in 2006. He even emailed Epstein, and apparently there's evidence of this, in 2008 to ask for financial advice. This is during the economic collapse in 2008. And so he was looking for, Jeffrey Epstein's consulting, I guess, in how to get through it. And since he lied to authorities about the nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, Staley was issued a fine of 1.8 million pounds.
I hate scams, especially the ones that target seniors, and Medicare is chock full of them. Between commission-hungry brokers and thousands of confusing plan options, most seniors aren't on the best plan for them. That's why we partnered with Chapter. They're fully independent and they work for you, not the insurance companies. They can review all your options in under 20 minutes, and the average senior they help saves over $1,100 a year. And the best part, it doesn't cost you a thing. Call the number on your screen today.
And banned from holding senior management roles in the city in 2023, leading to him losing about 18 million pounds worth of pay. This was a piece that was published in The Guardian, which is why they're using pounds as opposed to dollars. Now, later in the hearing, Thomas Massie asked Patel about the clients who were later identified by victims in the 302 files. So again, the 302 files refer to FBI Form FD-302 documents used by agents to summarize interviews with victims, witnesses, and suspects. So that's what he's referring to. And he has that documentation and he wants to ask Kash Patel about it. Let's take a look at what Kash Patel has to say.
That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does.
That's fascinating. So there you have Thomas Massie, again, in possession of the 302 files, its descriptions of the clients. So again, obviously, through this line of questioning, Thomas Massie has caught the FBI director in yet another lie. Because what was the initial lie that kind of snowballed into the mess that the Trump administration is currently dealing with? Well, they promised to release the Epstein files, and then out of nowhere, you have a statement coming from the Trump administration alleging there is no client list. There were no clients. There's nothing to see here. That was a lie. That was very clearly a deception by the Trump administration to the American people, and it's pretty gross. So what does Kash Patel have to say about that?
Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
That did not in any way satisfy Congressman Massie. He kept pushing. And this is where I believe Kash Patel gets caught in yet another inconsistency, another lie. Take a look.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of at 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
You have to admit that moment was incredible. What would Kash Patel, prior to entering the Trump administration, have to say to anyone else, the previous FBI director, making the same argument before the House Judiciary Committee? Oh, he would definitely excoriate that person, accuse them of being part of a cover-up, because that's what this is. It's a cover-up. How do you say that there were no clients when you haven't? I mean, he just admitted right there that he hasn't reviewed the documents that previous administrations. Let me get the exact wording that he used. He basically places the onus on 2 different US attorneys' offices across 3 previous administrations. Okay, but you're FBI director. Why don't you review the alleged co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein's? Why don't you consider bringing charges forward? And more importantly, what's stopping you? What's stopping you? Man, Kash Patel is not good at this. We used to have more sophisticated liars in the administration, and that's the thing. We're really having a competency problem in this country, even when it comes to federal liars. And I guess that's a good thing, at least for the American people, because now we can actually see it happening in real time when we're being deceived. But that's what's happening here. And for whatever you might think about Thomas Massie's libertarianism and his stances on other political policies, you got to hand him a lot of credit for demanding justice for Jeffrey Epstein's victims and wanting transparency on behalf of the American people. That's what a leader does. And he deserves respect for that. I respect him for doing this. His line of questioning to me went beyond the usual typical political theater that we can see during these hearings. He wants answers, and he's holding Kash Patel's feet to the fire. Now, at this point, what remains a mystery to me is whether the expression on Kash Patel's face, that constant bug-eyed look of shock and fear, if it's just like his mainline, facial expression, or if he's really panicking. Because if he's not, he should. He's been outed as a fake, as a phony, as someone who's engaging in a cover-up, and I think it's wrong.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.